I don't usually pick up hitchhikers. I've seen enough true crime documentaries to know better. But that night, something about the guy standing on the side of the road made me slow down. Maybe it was the way he held up a hand, not desperate, not demanding, just patient. Like he already knew I was going to stop. It was past midnight, and I was deep in West Texas, the kind of stretch where the road goes on forever and the darkness swallows everything outside your headlights. I was heading back to Houston after visiting my dad in El Paso, a trip I had made dozens of times before. My gas tank was half full, my playlist was running dry, and the monotony of the drive was starting to wear on me. That's when I saw him. A lone figure on the side of the highway, thumb out, backpack slung over one shoulder. His clothes were rumpled, faded jeans, a jacket that looked too warm for the weather. He had shaggy, unkempt hair and a rough sort of look, but not in a way that immediately screamed danger. More like someone who had been on the road too long. I slowed down, rolling to a stop a few feet ahead of him. As he jogged up to the passenger door, I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to drive off. But before I could change my mind, he yanked open the door and climbed in with a practiced ease, like he had done this 100 times before. "Appreciate it, man," he said, slinging his backpack down between his feet. "Didn't think anyone would stop out here." I glanced at him as I pulled back onto the road. Up close, he looked older than I'd first thought, late 30s, maybe early 40s. His face was lined, his eyes sharp. Not threatening, but something about him made the hairs on my arms prickle. "No problem," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Where you headed?" "East," he said, stretching his legs out. "Anywhere east, really." A vague answer. Not great. I nodded but didn't push it. For a few miles, we rode in silence. I focused on the road, the empty desert stretching out endlessly on either side of us. The occasional road sign flickered past, glowing green in the headlights. My passenger settled in, glancing around the car, his fingers tapping absent-mindedly on his knee. "You a writer?" he asked suddenly. I frowned. "What?" He nodded toward the passenger seat, where my old notebook sat under an empty fast food bag. I had been jotting down ideas for work earlier in the trip. Kind of, I admitted. Not a real one. Just some ideas here and there. He smiled, like that answer amused him. "Same. Actually, I'm working on a story right now." I glanced at him again. Yeah, he said, stretching out the word. "It's about a guy driving through Texas at night. Long drive, empty highway, same stretch of road as this one. He picks up a stranger, just like you did." A chill ran down my spine. I forced a chuckle. "Sounds familiar." "Oh, it gets better," he continued, grinning. "The guy, let's call him the driver, he starts noticing weird things about his passenger. Little things at first. The way he talks, the way he moves. The way he seems to know things about the driver that he shouldn't." I swallowed, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. "Like what?" The man turned his head to look at me fully now, his smile widening. "Oh, you know. Like the crack in the windshield." My blood ran cold. I hadn't mentioned that. I forced a laugh, but my fingers twitched against the wheel. "Lucky guess." "Maybe," he said. His eyes flicked down toward my center console. "Or maybe like the fact that you've got an old granola bar wrapper tucked under your phone." I tensed. He was right, there was a crumpled wrapper, half buried in the cup holder. My mouth went dry. "Did you see that when you got in?" The man just smiled and leaned back in his seat, stretching his arms behind his head. "I told you, man. I'm writing a story. And I know exactly how this one ends." My pulse pounded in my ears. The road stretched ahead of us, empty and dark. I had picked up the wrong hitchhiker. The hum of the tires against the pavement filled the silence between us. I kept my hand steady on the wheel, but my heart was pounding. This guy, whoever he was, knew things about me that he shouldn't. The crack in the windshield. The wrapper in the cup holder. I stole a glance at him. He was grinning, like he was enjoying the tension rolling off me in waves. I gotta say, he continued, stretching his legs out, the best part of a story? The build-up. You gotta set the mood right. Long, dark roads. Just the two of us. No other cars in sight. Now that's isolation. I clenched my jaw. Sounds more like the start of a horror story. His grin widened. Exactly. I forced a chuckle, but my fingers were gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. My mind raced through options. I was in the middle of nowhere, no exits, no gas stations for miles. If I tried to pull over and kick him out, what would happen? Would he get violent? Did he have a weapon? The guy seemed to read my thoughts because he suddenly held up his hands. Relax, man. I'm just messing with you. Yeah? I shot back. 'Cause it sure doesn't feel like it. He shrugged. You think I'm creepy. I get it. But that's the fun of a good horror story, right? The tension? The way it gets under your skin? I didn't answer. You know, he mused, tapping a rhythm on his knee, some people think horror stories are just made up. But the best ones? The real unsettling ones? He turned to me, voice dropping lower. They're based on truth. A shiver ran down my spine. Tell me something, he said suddenly. Why'd you stop for me? I hesitated. What? You don't seem like the kind of guy who picks up strangers. So why'd you stop? I swallowed, trying to think. He was right. I never did this. I had ignored dozens of hitchhikers before. But something about him had made me hit the brakes. I kept my voice even. You looked normal. He laughed at that. A genuine, full-bodied laugh. Normal? He shook his head. Damn, man. You really don't get it, do you? I frowned. Get what? His grin faded. This isn't your story. A lump formed in my throat. You think you're the main character, the guy in control. But you're not. You're just playing your part. He leaned in slightly, his voice taking on a slow, deliberate cadence. And the thing about stories? The characters don't get to decide how they end. I felt a cold sweat break out along my back. Okay, I said, my voice tight. Then how does this one end? He sighed, stretching again. Oh, you'll see soon enough. I didn't like that answer. I didn't like anything about this. Up ahead, a road sign loomed in the darkness. Rest area, 2 miles. I made a decision. I cleared my throat, forcing my voice to stay casual. You know what? I could use a break. I'm gonna pull over at the rest stop up ahead. For the first time since he got in the car, the stranger's expression changed. Just for a second. It was quick, barely noticeable, but I caught it. A flicker of something behind his eyes. I had said the right thing. Or maybe the wrong thing. Either way, I was about to find out. The green sign for the rest area flickered past in my headlights, 1 mile to go. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but every muscle in my body was wound tight. The guy beside me had gone quiet, staring out the windshield, but I could feel it, the shift in the air. He knew something was up. I kept my voice casual. You need a break too? Maybe stretch your legs? He didn't answer right away. Just kept tapping his fingers against his knee, his head tilted slightly. Thinking. Calculating. Then, finally, yeah. That's probably a good idea. I didn't like the way he said it. The rest area appeared on the horizon, just a small turnout off the highway, barely more than a patch of cracked asphalt with a couple of dimly lit vending machines and a single restroom building. No cars. No people. Good. Or bad. I slowed the car, pulling into the lot. The headlights washed over the empty space, and my stomach twisted. I had been hoping for at least someone to be here. A trucker. A car parked overnight. No such luck. I shifted into park and exhaled, forcing my hands to relax on the wheel. "Gonna grab a drink," I said, pushing open the door. He sat there for a second longer before nodding and unbuckling his seatbelt. I stepped out into the night air, my heart thudding against my ribs. The vending machines buzzed softly, their lights flickering in the dark. I could hear the distant hum of the highway behind us, but otherwise, the night was still. I walked toward the machines, pretending to dig into my pocket for change. My mind was racing. What now? If this guy was dangerous, I had to get out of this situation fast. But how? I could try to run, but he didn't seem out of shape. If he chased me, I wasn't sure I could outrun him. Or worse, what if he had a weapon? Footsteps. He was right behind me. I tensed but kept my back to him. The vending machine's glow reflected off the glass, and I could see his blurred reflection standing just a few feet away. Too close. I hit a random button. A bag of pretzels clattered into the slot. I bent down slowly to grab it, then, in one sharp movement, I turned to face him. He was just watching me. Expression blank. Hands in his pockets. My throat was dry. "You want something?" He smiled, too slow, too deliberate. "Nah." I forced a laugh, trying to keep things light. "All right." I turned, heading back toward the car. Every step felt like wading through deep water. Don't run. Don't show fear. But the second I opened the driver's door, his voice stopped me. "You ever wonder," he said, "why you really stopped for me?" I froze. Slowly, I turned back to him. He was still standing by the vending machine, but his smile was gone now. His face was unreadable. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. He took a slow step toward me. Then another. "People think they make their own choices," he said. "That they decide what they do, where they go." Another step. "But what if I told you, you didn't actually choose to stop tonight?" The air felt heavier. I swallowed. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" He tilted his head. "I mean, think about it. You never pick up hitchhikers. But tonight, you did." My skin prickled. "You had no reason to stop," he continued. "Yet you did." "Why?" I had no answer. He was too close now. Just a few feet away. His voice dropped lower. "Maybe," he said, "you were supposed to." Something snapped inside me. I wasn't going to wait to find out what he meant. In one sharp motion, I yanked open the driver's door, jumped in, and slammed it shut. My hands flew to the ignition. But the keys weren't there. My stomach dropped. I had left them on the vending machine. And now, the stranger was just smiling at me through the glass. My chest tightened as I stared at the empty ignition. The keys. They were still sitting on top of the vending machine, right where I had set them down. Just a few feet away. But between me and those keys stood him. The stranger watched me through the windshield, his expression unreadable. He hadn't moved. Not yet. My pulse pounded in my ears as I forced myself to think. Options. I could make a run for it, grab the keys, and get back in before he reacted. Or I could drive away, except I couldn't. Not without the keys. Or I could fight. I didn't like that option. My eyes flicked to him again. His hands were still in his jacket pockets, but that didn't mean he wasn't armed. He took a step closer. I locked the doors. A slow grin spread across his face. Like he had been waiting for me to do that. My throat was dry. I reached for my phone, fumbling to unlock it. No service. Of course. He took another step. Then, he reached into his jacket. No. I wasn't going to wait to see what he pulled out. I threw open the driver's door, launching myself out of the car. My feet barely hit the pavement before I was sprinting toward the vending machine, my arm outstretched for the keys. I grabbed them, and at the same moment, I heard the sound of footsteps pounding against the pavement behind me. I spun around. He was already there. Too fast. Too close. I barely had time to react before he lunged. Instinct took over. I ducked, twisting out of the way just in time. His hand snatched at empty air where my shoulder had been a second ago. I bolted toward the car, slamming the key into the door. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly missed. Then suddenly, his hand grabbed my wrist. A sharp yank. I stumbled back, nearly losing my balance. "Why are you running?" His voice was calm, too calm. Like he was still enjoying this. I tore my arm away, shoving him back with everything I had. He barely stumbled, but it was enough. I yanked the door open, threw myself inside, and slammed it shut. Click. Lock. He lunged, his hand smacked against the glass, hard enough to rattle it. I jammed the key into the ignition. The car roared to life. He was still right there, inches from my face, his breath fogging up the window. He wasn't yelling, wasn't pounding on the door anymore. He was grinning. And then, he stepped back. Just a single step. He tilted his head and pointed at something behind me. A spike of dread shot down my spine. Don't look. Every instinct screamed, don't look. But I did. Just for a split second, my eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. And I saw it. A car. Headlights off. Parked at the very edge of the lot. It had been there the whole time. Waiting. I whipped back toward the stranger, my stomach twisting into a tight knot. He winked. And then he turned around, walking straight toward the other car. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I slammed my foot on the gas. Tires screeched as I shot forward, gravel kicking up behind me. The vending machine's glow disappeared in my rearview mirror, swallowed by the darkness. I didn't slow down. Didn't check to see if he was following. I just drove. But I knew one thing for sure. That wasn't random. That wasn't just some weirdo on the side of the road. That was planned. And I had barely gotten away. The engine roared as I sped back onto the highway, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. My breath came in sharp, uneven bursts, adrenaline still surging through my veins. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The rest stop was gone. The vending machines, the cracked pavement, the dim lights, swallowed by darkness. But my eyes weren't looking for that. I was looking for the car. The one with the headlights off. But the road behind me was pitch black. For a brief second, I thought maybe I had gotten away. Maybe whoever was in that car had decided it wasn't worth it. Maybe I'd just barely slipped through their fingers. Then, headlights. Distant, but there. My stomach clenched. At first, they were small pinpricks in the darkness. But they were growing. Getting closer. I pressed the gas pedal down harder. The speedometer climbed past 80, then 85. The lights behind me stayed steady. Not slowing. Not turning off. Not disappearing. I swallowed, forcing my brain to stay calm. Options. There was a town coming up in about 20 miles. I had checked the signs earlier. If I could just get there, find a gas station or a well-lit parking lot, I'd be safe. But 20 miles felt like a lifetime. I glanced back again. The car was closer now. Not tailgating, not trying to run me off the road, just keeping pace. Waiting. A sick feeling settled in my gut. I didn't know if the hitchhiker was in that car. I didn't know if he had been working with whoever was behind the wheel. But I knew it wasn't a coincidence. He knew that car was there. He had pointed right at it. And then he had let me go. Like he wanted me to run. Like this was part of the story. The thought sent an icy shiver through me. I forced myself to breathe, my mind racing. If they wanted to run me off the road, they would have done it already. If they wanted to shoot, they wouldn't be waiting. So what were they waiting for? A minute passed. Then another. The car stayed with me, just far enough back to keep me on edge. Then, suddenly, the headlights turned off. I felt my entire body go cold. The road ahead stretched on endlessly, empty and quiet. But now, the road behind me was just pure blackness. They were still there. I knew they were still there. But I couldn't see them. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Every instinct screamed to keep going, to drive faster, but my gut was telling me something else. I turned my high beams on. For a second, the road ahead flared in brilliant white. The asphalt glowed, every crack and bump visible. Nothing behind me. Just empty space. Then, a flicker. A shape, just barely in range, blending with the dark. Too close. Much closer than before. I nearly lost control of the wheel. They were gaining on me. Without a sound, without headlights, they had closed the distance. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The car lunged forward, speedometer hitting 95, then 100. I didn't care if I got pulled over. Didn't care if I was being reckless. I just had to get to that town. I forced my eyes forward. Don't check the mirror. Don't let them get in your head. The road sign appeared up ahead. Next exit, 8 miles. Almost there. I kept going, heart hammering in my chest, every nerve in my body on fire. The minutes stretched endlessly. Finally, lights. Distant, but real. A gas station, glowing in the night like a beacon. I swerved into the exit lane, tires screeching. The car behind me, if it was still there, didn't follow. I didn't stop to check. I pulled into the gas station, my entire body trembling. There were other cars here. A few people inside. The neon lights flickered above me, buzzing faintly in the quiet night. Safe. I threw the car in park and exhaled shakily, rubbing my face with my hands. I had gotten away. Or at least, I thought I had. Because when I finally looked up, there he was. The hitchhiker. Standing under the gas station lights. Smiling. Like he had been waiting for me. My breath hitched in my throat. The hitchhiker stood under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the gas station, hands in his pockets, watching me. Waiting. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. This isn't possible. I had left him behind. I had seen him walk toward that other car. The car that followed me. The car that never pulled off the highway. So how the hell was he here before me? My pulse pounded in my ears as I scanned the parking lot. A few cars were parked at the pumps, a couple of people moving about, oblivious. Witnesses. Good. But the hitchhiker wasn't moving. He just stood there. Like he had all the time in the world. I forced myself to breathe. I can't stay in the car. The second I thought that, I hated it. Why not? I could just keep driving. Get back on the road and leave this all behind me. But somehow, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. I exhaled, grabbed my phone, and stepped out of the car. The cool night air hit me, sending a shiver down my spine. The gas station lights cast long shadows on the pavement, flickering slightly. I walked toward the store entrance, keeping my pace steady. Not rushing, not running. Just moving. The hitchhiker didn't step in my way. He didn't call out. But as I passed him, he spoke. Softly. Told you this wasn't your story. I stopped. The words sent a chill through me. But I didn't look at him. Don't engage. Just go inside. I took another step. I like the way you ran back there, he mused. Didn't expect that. Thought you'd freeze up. My breath caught. He didn't expect that? I turned my head just slightly, enough to see him in my peripheral vision. He was smiling, that same amused grin, like he was enjoying this. "Is this still part of your story?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. He chuckled. "Oh, we're past that now." He tilted his head, eyes flicking toward the road. "Did you see it?" My stomach twisted. He knew. He knew about the car. The one that followed me with its lights off. I clenched my jaw. Who was in it? The grin widened. "Wouldn't you like to know?" A slow, cold fear crawled up my spine. I took a step back, shaking my head. "You're insane." He shrugged. "Maybe." I turned and walked straight into the store. The moment the door shut behind me, I felt like I could breathe again. The bright fluorescent lights felt safer. Normal. The clerk, a guy in his 20s, half-bored, scrolling on his phone, barely looked at me. "Help you," he muttered. I swallowed, then nodded toward the door. "That guy out there, the one by the pumps. You seen him before?" The clerk barely glanced up. "Who?" I turned toward the glass door. The hitchhiker was gone. The parking lot was empty. My throat tightened. "No." I turned back to the clerk. "The guy standing out there just now. Long hair, old jacket. He was right there." The clerk gave me a slow, unimpressed look. "Dude, I haven't seen anyone." I stared at him. My skin crawled. I turned back toward the lot, scanning the pumps, the spaces near my car. Nothing. No trace of him. And that's when I saw it. A scrap of paper, folded neatly, sitting on my driver's seat. My stomach dropped. There was no way. I walked back to my car, slowly, cautiously. The paper sat there, like it had been waiting for me. I reached for it with shaky fingers, unfolding it. Just 3 words. "See you soon." I didn't stop driving after that. Not for food, not for gas. Not until I was hours away, the sun rising over the Texas plains. I don't know who he was. I don't know what he wanted. But I know one thing for sure. That night, I wasn't the one writing the story. I was just another character in it. And somewhere out there, he's still writing. Waiting for the next chapter. For the next person to pick him up. For the next fool to play their part. If you like this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell to listen to new stories from Mr. Fear every day. Thank you for watching.